and welcome back to Griffin Eye News. I am your guest host, Gwen, this evening, and joining me is the very quiet and quick Scald the Strife Maker. Yay! Hello, Scalds!
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good. That's a lovely sword.
Well, I haven't used it much lately. Getting kind of a little rusty. So I thought I'd take a minute and clean it up. Is that thematic with tonight in any way?
It is indeed. In fact, we have joining us this evening her Grace Asny, Grimolfsdottir. Welcome, your Grace.
Oh, nice.
Hello. How are you? Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, your Grace.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
We're super excited to have you here tonight, and we are going to jump right in like we do.
This is one of my dreams come true.
To get her Grace on camera?
Yes.
So we'll jump right in. How long have you been playing in the SCA?
That's actually a pretty hard question because I took lots of breaks. So I started back in 1980, I think 8.
Okay.
My first event was Ferret's Feast in Valley Wold, which is Moose Jaw. And then I played for a number of years, and I think I probably stepped away when I was about, 16, 17, and then came back in when I was 23, and then played until I was in my 30s, and then took another handful of years break, and then came back in, I think it was in 2017. So off and on, I don't know, like 20 plus years, but maybe altogether, maybe less than that.
That is an interesting timeline. Awesome. So how did you get started the first time?
So kind of like everyone else during that time, like in the late 80s, I was playing D&D with friends, and it was not cool at all, like it is super cool now. And was hanging out a lot with a group of friends that were into Shakespeare, and we would recite poetry and do dorky things like that. And we just we came across, actually I think it was maybe actually been at the university, we came across a theater group that was talking about it. And one thing led to another, and my friend at the time, she came back to the FCA now, Diane Lang, or Antonia de la Thuringia, she and I just kind of hung out, and she said, do you want to go do this? And so we borrowed garb from the University Theater Club, and we ended up heading to Moose Jaw for that first event, which was in somebody's house. Because back then the events were really small in our local area, and Sigelhundas, I don't think it really even had a group at the time. And the people that were playing, I think we just all went to Moose Jaw. And so, yeah, it was in somebody's house, and we had the feast was cooked in the kitchen, and we ate the feast in the basement, and there wasn't enough room at tables, so I think I sat on the stairs, and yeah, it was a very weird time back then. Oh, that's another odd story. So I was living in Myrganwood, which is in Saskatoon at the time, and I was at work, and I was flipping through the phone book in order to try and find a name of somebody, a parent that I was working with. I was working for the YMCA before and after school program at the time, and I came across Trent Fair, who is Ivar the Black, and I'm like, hey, I know that guy. And so I contacted him, and we went out for drinks or something, and said, hey, do you remember me? We used to be friends years ago. And so, yeah, and so he was like, yeah, I totally remember you. So we went out for drinks, and then he kind of led me back into the SCA. So we started dating, and yeah, and he's like, oh, I'm like, so what's new in the SCA? He's like, well, I'm a knight now. And I was like, wow, like, what else have people done in the SCA since, like, in the last, like, 10 years or 7 years or whatever it was since I'd been out? And so, yeah, so kind of came back and saw all the people I used to know, and they all had fancy titles and were really accomplished at all of their sports or their arts. And yeah, so it was neat to kind of come back after that huge group, like that span of time,
Right.
how many people had really developed.
That's awesome. Okay, and so then round 3, I assume this is post or mid children. I guess not post children, we have them forever, but mid children coming back to the SCA again.
Yeah, and it was after our reign as the Prince and Princess in Avacal, and we actually got married during that reign, and it was just a really intense time in our life. And Ivor was in school full time, and I was working, and it was just really hard financially to kind of, the SCA is super expensive, and so it was hard to kind of do all that. We stick around for a while, and then I got pregnant with Roman, and he was just a really tough little guy, and he had a really hard time being in the SCA. And so, and being around like large groups of people, like camping events and hall events and stuff. So, and it was tough because I was working really hard at my sport, and Ivar was, fighting and teaching, and it was really tough for both of us to be at events, and one of us always had to give up in order to parent. And so we decided it was better for our family at the time to take a pause. And it was easier for us financially as well to do that. So yeah, we took a pause then, and then came back in, I think it was 2017. I think that's when we kind of found our way back, and it was just it was after Avacal had become a kingdom, which we were super sad that we missed. We paid attention to everything that was going on, and we would still like pay attention to all of the who was winning crowns and coronets and all that at the time. But yeah, so then we just, I don't know what happened. We just were like, hey, do you want to go to an event? And I said okay, and then we did.
And I believe it was
nothing to do.
I believe it was Scald the Hall 2017 that I saw was where I was helped getting you into garb because I was being courier for you. So I think 2017 sounds about right.
Okay.
It would have been the year that I started, so that would be 4 years ago, which 2021. So yep, that math works out.
Yeah, and I think it was 2017 because we were only back a short period of time before we ended up winning crown, and so I think we were back for like less than 18 months. I think 16 months we were back before we won. And so it was super weird because being out for as long as we had, and all the things that had changed, like all the culture that had changed, and all the, just everything, like all of the awards, all of the processes, all of the pomp and circumstance had all changed. And so I felt like a brand new person. And we were like, do you remember what the awards are? And we like had to like look stuff up. And we felt like the biggest newbies of any crown that had ever won.
That's awesome.
So on to a little bit of a different topic that we were talking about before you came in here with these sorts of things. I understand you have great joy in stabbing people with blades. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Yeah, so Rapier has always been a sport that I've really enjoyed. I often find, I think the joy for me is less about stabbing people and more about spending time with friends who have a similar interest and are trying to accomplish their goals. And so that is, and stabbing people just happens to be kind of the fun within that. And so I really enjoy the tournaments. I really enjoy practices and spending time with people in my local group or heading off into Myrganwood, which I've been doing pre-COVID, and going to as many fight practices as I can there. And yeah, it's just been, it's a fun sport, and it's an amazing community, like lots of really, really great people within it.
Awesome. So knowing that there's so many options of things to do in the SCA that can certainly foster that sense of family and community, what made you decide that the Dance of Steel specifically was for you?
I don't know. I think it was mostly just how open the community was and how kind they were. So many great teachers, right? I spent, when I was in I think the second time, just during the time that we had won Cornet in and around there, I really enjoyed at that time. There was a really big group here in Regina or Sigelhundas that were fighting. And so it was, there were so many people to learn from and lots of different fighting styles. And so it was nice to be able to connect with people here in the community to do that. And then, and I knew I wanted to come back to it for sure. And I couldn't fight when I was pregnant with Roman. And so so I knew that was, I put everything away at that time. And then we had Grayson while we weren't in the SCA. And then came back right when he was really, really young. And then, and so that gave me the opportunity at that point, knowing that I wasn't going to be pregnant for a while or again, to be able to thank gosh, and then able to come back and actually more dedicated to it. And there's just like some incredible instructors here in Avacal, right? Like Master Tonis, who is now left. I spent a ton of time with him, learning from him. Master McLaren, who is my mod, who is just unbelievable teacher and really dedicated. Which is really lovely. Don Caiaphas is an excellent teacher. I learned a lot from him. A lot of my style is from him. And so it's just, I don't know, just really kind people who are willing to spend time and help. And I think it's fantastic.
Awesome.
So in your time as a rapier fighter, have you developed any signature moves or combinations, or the thing that when you walk into a fight, if I do this, I'm gonna win?
No, I never know that I'm going to win ever. Actually, that's. I wish that I had that better. I wish I had that skill to know. I think that part of it is I fight refused, and so which is not common Avacal. I think that most of the mods can fight refused, but that's not their favorite style. And that was one of the things that I learned from Don Caiaphas, was that style or that approach. And so when I do use that outside of Kingdom, it's usually seen as quite surprising because it is pretty uncommon. I do enjoy Sword and Dagger. That's kind of my favorite go-to style, which is kind of unfortunate because I use it so much and I kind of stick to it. So it's probably not the best. I should probably lean on and learn other things. But yeah, so I do find it. I do find that that's the most helpful. One of the things that I did learn though, which is kind of weird, was that in Avacal we don't do a lot of hand taking here, where you just tap the hand and then you lose it, and it's not really common here. I don't know why we don't really focus on it, but it is super common outside of Kingdom. Like I think most other kingdoms do that, and the only reason why I say that was I was in both Penzik and Estrella, and I was in a tournament, and it was like, and specifically in Estrella, it was a prize tournament, which I didn't anticipate to place at all. But I was really irritated that I was out in 3, which was, you had 3 lives and I lost them all. And I lost them to taking my hands every time. And I was so frustrated. And so I was talking to somebody in line and I was talking about, about my fighting style or whatever. And then one guy said, well, isn't that the first thing that you learn is to take hands and to defend that? And I said, no, that's actually not what we do at all here. He's like, oh, that's weird. I said, so could we fight again and not, like, let's just not take my hands. I said, let's try that. And then I did so much better. And so it was something that I learned that I really have to learn how to defend against, because outside of Kingdom, it's really popular. and I can go much further when if I can be able to just defend that alone.
Right.
Nice. So being from a small shire like Sigelhundas and not from like an epic barony like Myrganwood or Borealis, how has this shaped your SCA journey?
Well, I am a blood of the wood of Myrganwood because I did live there, so I can say that I do have roots there. But being in Sigelhundas, part of it was there was a small group of us that really helped establish the Shire years and years ago, and so part of that has made me really understand how important it is to pay attention and to learn from and grow with some of the smaller groups. So spending time, and I think I've had almost every position in the Shire. All the administrative roles. I don't think I've ever been the like the marshal in charge. I never did that, but everything else I think I've done. And so part of that gives you an understanding of what it's like to actually administrate pretty heavily in the SCA and follow the rules and guidelines and policies and that kind of stuff. So that really, I think, has formed my interest in kind of the greater administration of the kingdom. And I've been really involved in and try to be involved in helping shape that and working with all the different seneschals that we've had and various royalty and assisting support to them. And that kind of, also bleeds into my real life of being in HR and trying to offer support. So like that administrative side, I find really interesting as well. And so I think that, being from a small place and being from, knowing that you kind of have to, in order to really have a group that is healthy and is really focused, you have to participate in its growth. And so spending a lot of time in doing that too, and trying to make sure that you I work a lot with and partner a lot with the people that are in the Shire. So giving them opportunities, especially kind of on the center stage, so they can really see what it's like to be involved in the larger kingdom.
Can attest. So, are there additional benefits or drawbacks that you see to living life outside of the tyrannical grip of a baron, or?
Barons. I've really met a lot of tyrannical barons, so I can't really say that. I do find it tough, right? Like, especially if you're on your path. It is really tough in a fighting world if you've got a really small group of individuals to practice with.
Right.
I am not someone who enjoys doing drills by myself. I think it's boring and I don't get a lot out of it. And I follow videos online and I try and stay connected with others online, and it's not a joy at all. And so I find, I would travel a ton to Myrganwood to their practices,
Right.
and it was convenient because the work allowed me to do that at the time. And so I do find it tough. Like, you kind of have to build your own group of people to practice with in order to enhance your skill set. And we did that a little bit actually just before COVID. We were starting to kind of grow a bit more in our group, but I do find it tough. And also being outside of Alberta, where there are a lot more, like Borealis is a huge rapier community and really great practices, and so the odd times, think about there were 2 or 3 times in the prior to COVID in that last year, that really helped. But it is tough. It is, and it is one of the things I struggle with for sure.
So you had mentioned that your husband is also part of the SCA, and how has he and your children embraced not just your journey in the SCA, but also your rapier fighting? Do they stand up as targets for you, or help you with videos, or? Not
at all. No. Grayson, my youngest, absolutely loves the dagger, and at any given time it's pulled out. He probably plays with it and uses it more than I do lately. I find it all over the house in weird spots. It is blunted, so it's safe. just to make sure that people aren't worried. Um, but Ivar is really good. Like he's taking up Rapier in order to help me advance in my path and to develop my path. And so, if I ask him to, he'll get geared up and we'll mess around. The challenge is that we often have our swords that are just sitting in the living room. And so at any given time, we'll pull them out and start messing around, which is super unsafe because we're not, we don't have our masks on. And he is incredibly skillful. And so I know that I'm not in any danger except for our hands, which, we're not wearing anything on them. And so it's often getting tapped or mess around. But the odd time accidents happen. And so, we just, easier to bruise and that kind of stuff. And we're laughing and giggling and that kind of stuff. So, and not necessarily doing things that are, are SCA, within the rules. And so it's, it's more playful, that kind of stuff. But every once in a while, in the fall, we got geared up and we're messing around in the backyard. So it's nice to have a practice partner when we have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Awesome. So if someone brand spanking new wanted to get started, we're going to two-part this, wanted to get started in general in the SCA, what would you recommend to them?
Meet Gwen.
Yay! Any more in depth in that than you want to be?
Cute. And so I think that, regardless of what city you're in, there are so many great people in Avacal that can be able to help you out. I think part of it is just trying to figure out what you really enjoy and what's important to you to try and have fun with and being willing to test out. If it's costuming, if it's, if it's fighting, whatever it is, and just be willing to transfer yourself back in that time and be okay with that. And it doesn't matter if you wear a toga. It doesn't matter if you've got broadcloth as your garb. What's most important is that you're making an effort and taking the chance to come out, and it will be worth it because people love coming. Like, I would say that most of our members really love when new people come out so that they can talk to them about the SCA and share their experiences. And so it just takes you being willing to come to that first event, and then you have a whole opportunity that it opens up to.
Yeah. Okay, so second part, if someone were interested in getting started in the Rapier community, what would you recommend?
Similarly to everything else, just come to a practice or come to an event. And there'll be tons of people that'll be willing to sit down and hang out with you and describe all the necessities that you need in order to be safe, which is, at this point, you just basically need probably a cup or a Jill, and puncture-proof clothing. And then everything else, someone can help you out with. Like, there'll be enough gear in order to get garbed up and get you safe and get you practicing. And so just taking the risk to do that, and it's okay if you feel silly, and it's okay if if the first time you're not able to land a shot or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's a chance to get out and connect with people. And then, once you do that, then you'll start to join that community because it is such a good community of people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I am a fan of the Rapier community. I have a perfect record at this point. I have won exactly 0 fights, so I am batting 1,000 as it goes. So, yeah.
Look at it. So speaking of practice, Sigelhundas is famous or infamous for practicing pillaging and having a beautiful tea. Can you tell us a little bit more about that very unique Sigelhundan experience at pillage practice?
Pillage practice has changed a lot. Pardon?
PG-13 stories.
PG-13. Oh, PG-13. Yeah, that's super important. Pillage practice, it was years ago, it was called the Danish Frisian Pillage Practice and Spring Tea. That's how it all started. And I can't remember what year it was, but it had to be in the 90s when it first launched. And it was at this beautiful camp area, which was the Boy Scouts owned. And it had a pretty archaic, rustic cabin on site. And there was, from the length of time I was there, there was no flush toilets. But eventually there were cabins, so that was cool. But it basically was an event that time didn't matter. It didn't matter if you had to, what the agenda was. All that mattered is that, yeah, you showed up, and at some point somebody would put on garb and somebody would start to fight, and it was all kind of this, didn't matter what the agenda said, we would just kind of go with it. And so in the middle of the event, for some reason, there was a spring tea. I have no idea why. I don't know how it got started. I don't even know how the name got added. But there was a very formal, and at one point, a fairly British kind of approach tea, like late century, like probably Victorian era tea, where everyone would, the war would stop entirely, and then a group of individuals bring out trays of tea with biscuits, and people would just stop and they'd take their armor off and their helmets off, and you could see people, with their pinkies up, drinking out of these beautiful china. Or at one point, when I think Ivar and the guys ran it, I think it was at a plastic cup, but and I think it was probably iced tea, as opposed to actual tea. And I'm quite sure there was Oreos at that one too. So there was a variety of effort made towards whatever that experience was. But that's where a lot of my favorite memories come from, actually, was that event, because it was so laid back, and then it paused for a lot of years, and I don't know why. I assume nobody was running it for whatever reason. And then we kind of relaunched it back in, I'm gonna guess it was 2018 maybe, or 2019. I can't remember what. No, it couldn't have been that. Maybe 2018. And we had it at a Camp Monaghan, where I grew up, and it was a really beautiful location with a lake, and you go canoeing, and it was just it was right back to the experience that I had from years ago. And it was just a fun event. It's one of my favorite events, and we've had it now a few times since then. And it's a really small event. We get anywhere like under 100 for sure.
Yes.
People that come out. And I think the smallest may have been even this last year, over 219. No, yeah, 219 was probably the last time, and there was probably maybe 35 people.
We maxed out supper at about 48.
Okay, there you go.
Yep.
There you go. Yeah, so it was really, really tiny, but such a nice event. And we try to have, of course, depending upon the royals' appreciation of what they wish, but we try and have it to be a non-status event, where, we kind of joke about checking the cornets or at the door, although, obviously royals are always welcome to do whatever they please at that event. But it was meant to be like, we have, instead of having like a head table, we have a long table, so that everybody can feel welcome and kind of equal station of whatever kind of accord that is. So
awesome. It was Pillage Practice, the first one back that you mentioned, was my second event ever. So
okay.
I also have super duper fond memories of that being a thing. So
at that event, but
yes. And I've heard other stories that we can't talk about here, but a good time has since been had by all, as far as my SCA recollection goes. So now, you mentioned before, but I'll get you to tell us all about it, that are you currently in service to a peer?
I'm in two relationships right now. I have a relationship with Master McLaren. I'm his protege. And I've got a contract to him that we renew annually through having a conversation and a beverage, and as well as to Mistress Corwin of the Wood, on the path to Pelican. So I've got two, and it's kind of they work hand in hand with me, and when I made the decision to go with both of them when they asked, and we had conversations. We wanted to make sure that everyone was kind of good with it because it kind of all happened near the same time. So.
Awesome.
So as a person who's been around for a few years, what changes have you seen in the SCA since you started when you were a teenager versus now when you're not a teenager?
Not a teenager. That was very kind, Scout. Yeah, everything. Like when you're a teenager, you don't pay attention to anything. Like you don't read Kapora. You don't really pay attention or care about, you know, how period your stuff is, or at least I didn't at that time. It was more for the social activity than it was anything. So like in general, it was hard because I didn't really pay attention to anything other than that. And at the time when we were part of Vontier, we didn't really see royals out. And now you go to an Avacal event, you know, there's previous royals sitting across the table from me or with me or, you know, whatever. Like there's, we're kind of everywhere now. So it's a really different experience between those two. Because it was unique when royalty would come out, and now they're at every event there's at least a couple there. So, but also now I think that things are a lot more serious, right? Like we take our policies and processes and pomp and circumstance incredibly seriously. Tons of changes when it comes to the culture. You know, like a big focus now on ensuring that we're being very respectful to all cultures and all traditions, which is, you know, which we haven't been in the past. There's, you know, a lot of appreciation and support for different lifestyles like LGBTQ 2S+. Which I think is amazing. We would have never seen two same-sex couples that would reign, and now in Avacal we haven't seen that, but all over the known world it's happening, and so I think that's fantastic. So a lot more inclusive, I think, than what we were years ago, and I think that's all for the better. And I appreciate that we've got some growing pains, and we're still not there yet. As a society, but I think we are growing, and so I think that I appreciate that a lot more for sure.
So, do you have any favorite moments or memories that you'd like to share of your time in the SCA?
I have so many. I think there's a few. Probably my most memorable one was when Ivar won Crown, Avacal Crown. We had previously reigned as Prince and Princess Coronet, but it was different when he won Crown. Partially because I was super shocked because I didn't anticipate that he would win, not because I didn't think he was talented. He was obviously incredibly talented. Just more, I didn't believe that it would happen to us at that time in our life, and being back as recently as we had. And so I think that when he was going further and further, and we were in Grand Prairie, and I was watching him fight, but it was really like it was so stressful because every single time he would, you know, shift away from a shot or he would land a shot, it would just like run like energy right through me. And so I was watching from the above in the cafeteria because I had the kids there and I was feeding them, and it was the semifinals, and I was watching him fight. And I tried to be down, but when you have kids, it doesn't always happen that way. And so I was literally watching him fight, and I was feeling more nervous and more nauseous because I wasn't sure about what was going to happen next. And then when he was in the finals, and he did his, typically they do the speeches between the combatants, and you've got someone who speaks on your behalf, and but Ivar never lets anybody speak on his behalf. I don't think I have ever seen him do that. He always likes to be able to take the floor that way, and is an incredibly talented speaker. And he had, and I wish that I would have had, or somebody recorded it, but nobody ever had, and or at least didn't come across anybody that did. And he gave the most touching, loving speech that in that moment, and it was about our relationship and about us as a couple, and it had been like, it was a really special moment for me, and it made me just bawl, and I looked ridiculous because I didn't anticipate that at all, because that's not what you do. You have somebody speak for you, and he didn't let that happen. And so it was just it was a super sweet moment. And at that point, it didn't matter if he won, because I was just so touched by that and so proud of him. And then when he did win, I think I was probably the most graceless, classless person in the hall that day. And I was really shocked, and I probably said an expletive, which probably wasn't appropriate. But I was just it was like a bucket list for us as a couple. And it was just super touching. And it was like, I don't know, it was a gift that only he could give me, for someone who I grew up with in the FCA, and I knew that it was his dream, and it became my dream. And I can't believe that he did it. And it was just such a touching moment. Yeah, so it was incredible. So that was really amazing. I think another moment, which was weird, was raining during the plague. Like, memorable for all the wrong reasons, actually. So, like, having to make a call if we were going to go to Golf Wars,
Right.
the night hours, less than 10 hours before we were going to go, making a call if we were going to cancel our flight or not, and trying to figure out, the impact that it would have on other people if we weren't going, because we knew that people were going as a big group, and if we were going to pull out, how would that affect others? And then trying to reign a kingdom and support people in their mental health during lockdown,
Yes.
of which the world had never done before. And so it was just a really hard time shifting from wanting to physically be with people and to care for them, to doing everything online, which was such a unique experience, which people weren't doing. And wondering, are we having events? Are we not having events? What do we do with people who, are, in the middle of making decisions about events? And it was supposed to be Quad Wars anniversary, and having to make a decision about canceling that, and then making a decision to cancel Crown or Coronation. And it was just it will go down with probably the most tears that I've ever shed over, on behalf of others, because it just was impacting people in such a tough way. And I knew that the SCA can help share so much love for people, and yet it was so hard to tell people no. And it was hard for them to hear it, and we got lots and lots of notes of people it was hard for them and hurt them, but people were really supportive at the same time too. So yeah, it was so memorable in probably not the best ways.
So a memorable time, but not necessarily a favorite memory, but definitely one you'll remember for a very long time.
Yes.
Yeah. But to offset that, probably another one, I know you only asked for one, but now I'm telling you three, was probably the PLQ necklaces, and our decision to do that during our first reign. So we, one of the things that we wanted to be able to do was try and shift the culture to away from just royals giving away and showing recognition, but instead having our representatives, who are the peers across the kingdom, to try and help shift that recognition down to all of the populace members, so that there was a lot more recognition that was happening that just wasn't happening at events from us, but from other people. And so that was really important to us, was to do something like that. So it was necklaces, and I because we made them, I kept one. And so being able to, each peer received one, and then they were responsible for, when they saw someone who was demonstrating peer-like qualities, to take that necklace and then pass it on to somebody else. And so, and at that point, that individual can keep that necklace. And then if they do become a peer, they can then give it away to somebody else. So yeah, so it's just a really nice moment. And still to this day, I have people who, if I run into them, well, not obviously now because I'm not seeing people, but the last events that we went to, people come up to me and share the moment about what, you know, how they received the necklace, what happened, and tell the story of that. And it was just really touching. And then I see people who I don't even know have those necklaces, and it just warms me to know that that someone had recognized them.
Awesome. It is one of my favorite memories of bawling my face off in court. So yes, 100%. Which I have to admit, you have been responsible for a number of times. Just the all of the ugly crying in court. So and Ivar too, come to think of it. So all right, well, on that note, now that we're not crying, woo, made it through, I would like to thank you so much for joining us tonight, and Skeld, as always, for being my left-hand guy, and if there's anything that the Avacal needs to know, please come to Griffin Eye News to find out, because we're certainly doing our best. We will talk to you all later. Thanks for coming. See you later.
Good night.
Bye.